What is up, my friends? Myself and David Lynch are back to look back over what was an eventful weekend for the Reds in the Premier League. I'll take a point away at Arsenal at any time personally, but I'm very interested to see what Mr. David Lynch has to say. And David, firstly, I hope you had a lovely weekend, mate. And secondly, happy enough with the point of the Emirates?
Yeah, I think so. I think you absolutely would have taken it at the start of this week if someone had offered you to kind of beat Chelsea, beat RB Leipzig, and then go into Arsenal away from home. You'd absolutely take a point. I think there's been kind of a little bit of negativity around it in the aftermath of the game. Really, that it's kind of taken me a little bit by surprise. I don't know whether people kind of wholeheartedly bought into the idea that Arsenal were decimated by injuries. But as soon as we saw sort of Saka and Timber on the starting 11, I think that really, for me, that eased the majority of Arsenal's injury crisis, really. I mean, in reality, I think they were missing kind of Saliba through his own foolishness, really, and getting sent off, so not an injury. Calafiori, who you could argue he may have started but may not have because they might have liked Timber a right footer at left back anyway. And then, of course, Odegaard, who's injured. So really, arguably, just two big hitters missing. And yet Liverpool were missing the same with Jota and Alisson, who definitely would have started this game. So for me to go there, really, I think it was pretty much an even game between two sides who had similar injury issues. Ended up pretty much even on the numbers behind it. Ended up even in the scoreline. And I think the Liverpool last two seasons they've been beaten at Arsenal. They've finished behind Arsenal in the Premier League. So to go there, take a point, to stay 4 points ahead of them in the Premier League with not a vintage performance, but a performance where they were, in my opinion, at least as good as Arsenal over the 90 minutes. I think you absolutely take that as a step forward, really, and yeah, not the most memorable game ever, but absolutely a good point in my opinion.
Yeah, for me as well, the narrative around this game was certainly that it looked as if Arsenal had a cast of thousands out injured and we were fully healthy, which absolutely is not the case. So I totally agree with you on the expectations going into it. I would have taken a point any day of the week at the Emirates, to be honest, David. Do you know what I really did enjoy though? It's not very often this season we've seen Liverpool have to fight back, and ironically, this was our first draw of the season. But how refreshing was it to see Virgil and the lads let their heads drop when they went behind, not once, but twice, and found ways back in?
Yeah, that's it. Because you know when you come with a new manager, and every time they have to do something new that you haven't seen under this manager, you think that is a test of them. Can they come from behind at a difficult place to play? Can they? You know, we've seen it. There's been various sort of new circumstances they're thrown into. Can they do it in the Champions League under the manager? Can they do it away from home against a relegation side? Can they do it against the top side? All these different aspects that you got used to, and you knew there was always evidence that they could do under Jurgen Klopp. Yeah, it felt like a real test of that yesterday. And as you say, it's as much as it's about the quality side, it's also mental in terms of not letting your heads drop and being able to find the urgency and dominate the game in the right way. And they absolutely did that. I mean, again, I wouldn't say the second half performance even was vintage, but I thought they were at least as dominant as Arsenal were in the first half, which is why it kind of ends, 9 shots to 9. Expected goals are pretty similar because Liverpool were as good in the second half as Arsenal were in the first. So yeah, really, really encouraging to see that mentality to fight back. I mean, they won't want to repeat what was going wrong in the first half. There's absolutely no doubts about that. But if you find yourself in that position, it's all about showing guts, and I really did think that they did that.
So there was a narrative gone through my chat during the game that we were frustrated that we weren't seeing the best of Trent, the best of Salah, and why was he leaving them on the pitch? We got the answer to why he was leaving them on the pitch. When Trent got the ball, played it into the channel to Darwin, Darwin reversed it. And I'm not going to lie, David, as soon as that ball dropped to Mohamed Salah, I knew that there was only one place that ball was going. It was going in the back of the net. And I guess that's why you leave on the superstars for these moments, even in a game like that where, yeah, maybe they aren't at their brilliant best. It just takes that 1 second of brilliance, which is what we got from those three gents for that goal.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that the manager will think as well about that in terms of the first half performance is that there's a good reason that nobody was playing well pretty much. I mean, you look at, I didn't think Jones was getting a lot of the blame because he was coming in instead of Soberslai into that midfield. And, the shout in the first half, it's totally mixed up the balance and things are going wrong. But none of the three midfielders were playing well. And the reason for that was not that kind of balance in there of the selection, but because Liverpool were consistently, because of how Arsenal set up and the tactical approach, which was dropping Havertz in, we're just getting outnumbered in there constantly. And I challenge any midfielder to play well when that's the situation. It's impossible because you are constantly chasing shadows. A 5-yard pass makes you look stupid. And it wasn't just the midfielders that applied to, because they had such an inability to get grip on the game. The forwards were getting basically zero service, and the service they were getting was maybe long balls from Quivine Kelleher that Salah has to then battle for, which is just not his game, really. He's not going to win your headers up there or fight off Arsenal's defenders who are, to a man, absolutely massive. So it was the tactical setup for me that wasn't getting the best out of anyone and finding a way to progress the ball. And once they fixed that, it's no surprise to me, really, that you start to see more players start to play better in the second half. It's not kind of a magic switch where they suddenly just they were playing within themselves and then suddenly they're not. It's that the manager changed the tactics and absolutely got it right in terms of moving Trent inside a little bit more, made Liverpool much more secure, made it easier to get the ball up the pitch. And that is, you saw that in a nutshell, really, in that goal, in that Trent is in that inside position, pings the ball in behind, and then, Liverpool are in a better position to make the most of it. And yeah, I think credit to the manager for finding those tweaks. But also, I think when you've got a collection of world-class players not really playing well, you've always got to think it's probably more to do with the tactics than sort of 11 players having an off day.
One thing I really liked, and you don't see it too often from Arna, was him singling out Ibrahim Konate in his post-match press conference for praise. I think it's fair to say, David, that ever since he came on against Ipswich Town at half-time, he has not let that shirt go. He has been nothing but sublime, alongside, of course, our captain Virgil, who has been his usual brilliant best. Just a little word on Ibrahim Konate and the great start to the season and the fitness that we've been able to see from him as well.
Well, we shouldn't mention his fitness, Craig. I'll be honest. I think we're worried about cursing him. Let's just hope it continues this way. I really do hope so. Yeah, that he can stay in the team, because I think he's shown when he gets a consistent run, he's just a world class centre half, no doubt about that. I mean, so many moments in the game where he just cuts Martinelli off, and you see Martinelli's head just drop so much because he knows I'm not quicker than this guy. I'm not stronger than this guy. He's got absolutely everything. He's composed when he wins it as well to get the ball out of there or play it back. So, yeah, just a brilliant all-round performance from him, and he's playing it out of his skin at the moment. And maybe he has been robbed of a couple of Man of the Match awards, but he won the Liverpool's official one, didn't he, yesterday? And I thought he fully deserved it. He absolutely dominated that 1v1 battle with Martinelli. He kept getting locked into and basically won every battle he was involved in across the pitch. So, yeah, a world-class defender who our only hope is that he can just stay on the pitch consistently, because if he does, him and Virgil van Dijk are surely one of the best centre-half pairings in the world.
Yeah, and I wonder when we're going to start hearing that narrative, actually, because we've heard about, obviously, Gabriel and Saliba quite a bit over the last 2 months, or 2 seasons, and deservedly so. They're a great centre-back pairing, but Virgil van Dijk and Ibrahim Konate this season have been certainly as good as anybody that we've seen. I wanted to move on to talk about Andy Robertson for a second, if I can, and I wanted to do this as respectfully as possible, because, look, we all love Andy Robertson. He is one of my favourite signings of the last 10 years at Liverpool Football Club. I think of him as basically a straight swap for Kevin Stewart all the way back in the day for that deal from Hull. Have we perhaps seen the father time is maybe starting to catch up at Robbo a little bit, and the mind is there, but the body isn't willing? That's the way I'm looking at this. Yesterday, you could see that maybe we are in a situation where we have to start thinking about that left backside going forward.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the poorest probably I've ever seen him play for Liverpool, really, which I think says that how consistent and how good he has been for Liverpool down the years. But obviously that is a concern that is starting to creep in. I mean, there is that clear mitigation there in that Saka can make a fool out of basically any left back. He's a world-class player, absolutely brilliant, and that's a well-taken goal yesterday. And also, Robertson gets left in a 1v1 situation, which is not ideally where Liverpool want to find themselves in those moments. But you have to consider that a couple of years back, maybe, that Robertson would still have won that battle. You are going to end up in situations where, as much as you want to cover it off and stop it happening, that 1v1s are going to spring up sometimes. And Robertson just looks a little easier to beat than he used to be, which is going to be a problem for you. I mean, left back was a possibility coming into this summer as something Liverpool might strengthen, but I think there's an urgency now where I think they have to get it done in the next 2 windows. Whatever that means in terms of whether one of Robertson or Tsimikas leaves, we'll have to see. But I think that's a clear priority now, is to get someone who's a little closer to kind of peak years, or just coming into them, to come in and strengthen that left-hand side, because it looked like a weakness that Arsenal were trying to exploit yesterday, which is why they kept floating Havertz out that side to try and get Saka to 1v1. So, and that's an interesting flip actually on what we've seen in the last few years in terms of sides targeting the other side of the pitch. And Trent Alexander-Arnold, they were clearly going for Robertson now, which maybe shows you that he's not quite what he was. So yeah, I think that's a position that Liverpool really have to look at going forward.
It will be interesting to see if we see some links starting to emerge, perhaps in the summer transfer window. One final thing on the game yesterday, David. I thought it was very strange to see Gabriel Martinelli run into the corner flag with 15 minutes left to go at home at the Emirates. I don't know whether that's a sign of respect towards Liverpool or just the very pragmatic way that Mikel Arteta has this Arsenal team looking to kill the clock. I don't know. I don't want to be too rude about it, but I found it very weird to see that. I mean, I've been watching football a long time, and goalkeepers take times over goal kicks, but 15 minutes to go heading to a corner flag is a bit weird.
I think the one thing you would say about it as well is that we haven't seen any teams who are consistently winning things operating that way either. So, look, it didn't work out for Arsenal at all yesterday because they conceded the goal. So, and with enough time actually for Liverpool to have maybe got another. So, it really didn't work out for them. And as I say, you sometimes feel with Arteta, and I don't want to go over the top on him because I just think Arsenal have been phenomenal the last couple of seasons. Very unlucky not to win the title last season. A bounce of the ball could have done it for them. So unlucky in that regard. So they're by no means terrible, or he's not a great manager or whatever. But in terms of them getting over the line and things kind of working out for them, you wonder whether he just needs to tip the scales slightly back. I think he's just gone very, very defensive mindset wise, hasn't it? And you can't always hold back the tide, because if you're always looking to defend and see out a 1-goal lead, sometimes something will go against you, a bounce of a ball or just a moment of quality if you're up against the top side. And so always seeing out 1-goal leads just isn't possible, no matter how good you are defensively. So I think there has to be a little bit of a mindset change, not too much, but they've just gone too far towards the defensive. And as I say, you look at the side that's been hoovering up trophies, Manchester City, Real Madrid. They're not defensive in their approach at all. The priority is to attack, and the defense kind of comes after that. So that's something Arteta maybe needs to think about.
Just a quick word on the second most successful manager after Pep Guardiola in the last 3 years receiving his marching orders today, David. Did it come as a surprise to you? I have to say it wasn't for me, but I feel a little bit bad about that penalty incident yesterday, maybe being the final nail in his coffin, but I never understood the extension in the summer on this one, to be honest, mate. But your quick thoughts on Eric Ten Hag being dismissed?
Yeah, I just don't understand why they waited. It's so clear in the summer that this wasn't a manager who was going to win the Champions League or the Premier League at Manchester United. It was very clear after the first few games this season that was the case as well. So they've let him clearly have an influence on recruitment this summer as well, and waste a load of money on players who aren't going to be good enough. And so they have to, it's not just getting a new manager now, it's a rebuild. I mean, the big shock, and I think shows some incompetence from Ineos, is that they made that decision in the summer. And so I don't think if you're a United fan, you should be particularly filled with hope about the idea that this new setup is going to go out there and get the right manager now either. So yeah, Ten Hag absolutely deservedly sacked, but I don't think Manchester United are out of the woods yet.
It certainly makes me feel grateful for the succession planning that we had and the way that Arne Slot has come in and just hit the ground running. It really does make me feel like at least whoever is behind the scenes at our club really did plan this one out in a way that I think got the best out of the players that were already there, and certainly attributes from a manager that could come in and hit the ground running like we've seen, David.
Yeah, and I think I had faith that they would be good at this as well, though, because I think Liverpool, you could argue they maybe don't sign enough, but they are very good at signing players. The hit rate is incredibly high, and I think if you're good at identifying players, you can be good at identifying managers as well, because the approach is kind of similar, really, is looking at who has achieved above their budget, how have they done it, have they done it in a style of football that is scalable into the Premier League and a club like Liverpool. And those were the kind of boxes they were looking to tick, and it's absolutely Liverpool made the right decision. Again, it looks like in these early stages, and as I say with United, you just don't expect them to make the right decision, whoever they get in. So, maybe they'll get lucky and they'll get the right manager, but I still think they've got huge issues around player recruitment as well. So I still think they're in a little bit of trouble, really.
And long may it continue. Speaking about decisions, David, I was listening to Jamie Carragher yesterday speaking after the game, and Trent Alexander-Arnold came up in conversation, and Jamie Carragher said that, look, his interpretation of what Trent has been saying lately about Ballon d'Ors and whatnot has Jamie feeling like maybe he thinks Trent is going to depart from Madrid. Then Paddy Pimblett, again, who's not the voice of football, but is a Scouser, was saying that around the city, the whispers he's hearing again are that Trent Alexander-Arnold is likely going to make his mind up and go to Madrid. What concerns me about all of this isn't the man's decision. He's free to do whatever he thinks is best for his own life. But I don't want it dragged out because I don't want any bitterness towards Trent if indeed he does make that decision. I don't want Liverpool fans to feel like maybe Trent has dragged this out right towards the end. So there is a shorter goodbye period, and I don't think it would work well in that scenario. If Trent decides he's going to go, and again, I'm going to ask you about that, I would rather that we gave him the long goodbye like Jurgen Klopp, that we could process it as fans and have time. And of course, the club then have time to succeed. If you heard anything that gives you any pause for thought that maybe Trent is going to go to Madrid?
No, to be honest, I just think everything around this is a lot of speculation. People can read what they want into every Trent Alexander-Arnold interview or his body language, or I think this because X, Y, Z. But the reality is, no one actually knows at the moment, and Liverpool certainly, for their part, are not suggesting that they feel that the Real Madrid deal is done, or Trent's not giving them priority, and there's not. As far as we are aware, and my understanding is that talks are ongoing around a new contract, and I think everything else in between that, because there's nothing coming from Trent's side, I can absolutely guarantee you, everything around it is basically speculation, really. And I think, surely the default position is to think that Liverpool will try to do everything to tie him down to a new contract. We know that for a fact. We don't exactly know where Trent's head is at, but we know that he hasn't told Liverpool or informed Liverpool he's off to Real Madrid yet, and is engaging in these talks in good faith as far as we're aware. And like I say, people might want to fill in the gaps with, the feel or whatever, or, taking quotes in a certain way, or like I say, body language, being a body language expert. But for me, there's just no point filling in the gaps, because you can fill in the gaps and suggest it might be off to Real Madrid, and then all of a sudden the contract gets announced tomorrow, and that will get forgotten about. But I'd rather just not try and do that and try and speculate in those little areas where we don't know a lot. I just think there are certain things we do know, and like I say, it's that talks are ongoing, and then we'll kind of see beyond that. I just think the rest of it is, like I say, it's just speculation and people being concerned about it, worried, which is fair enough. But then don't try and fill that in and say that you think that this is because X outcome is coming. I just don't think that's the way to approach it, personally.
I wonder if perhaps people are looking around and thinking, okay, maybe Trent takes a bit longer to figure out, or maybe Mohamed Salah is the more difficult of the three. But they seemingly have no progress or public progress on any of the three. I think just probably has people feeling a little bit concerned that we're inching every day closer towards the winter window where we know these guys are going to be free to negotiate outside of the Premier League if they so wished. It's just that for me, David, from taking the temperature of the fan base that people are nervous about. Now, weirdly, there's been some more optimism from Mohamed Salah's side in the public perception about this, and people feel like Mo's looking like he's comfortable, he's enjoying his football, he's still contributing greatly to the team, and there's a bit of renewed optimism that maybe Mo would be likely to stay. Now, you've always been honest and said you believe that's the most difficult negotiation of the three. Still feel that's the case?
Yeah, I think so, just because of his wage packet is absolutely huge. So I still think that's kind of a sticking point. And that kind of negotiation from Liverpool's side of being worried about him kind of very suddenly dropping off, I still think that is present. But that's the thing about this is, if there's any public utterance that can be interpreted in a positive way, then all of a sudden people are swaying towards the Mohamed Salah contract maybe being more straightforward. But it's just how we interpret things and how we choose to see them. And you mentioned there about sort of no public confirmation of how things are going in terms of the contract talks. I mean, that is right, but I mean, neither party really wants to play these out in public. I mean, the only real solid update I can remember any of us having and us as journalists getting is when we spoke to Van Dijk a couple of weeks ago, and he told us that the contract talks are happening. So for me, again, maybe that's me just leaning towards positivity. That is to be taken as a positive update that Liverpool are working on these contracts, that they're trying to get them sorted. And I just think it's not worth kind of putting too much worry into it on the basis that it could be announced tomorrow. These things happen so suddenly. I mean, you couldn't tell me anyone who knew about Jarell Quansah's new contract coming. It just happens. A report comes out and then the deal's done, and then the announcements then on the official website. So it will be the same with these if they do get done. It's not like we're going to get a running commentary. So until we hear anything to the contrary, or that Liverpool are feeling that they're going to lose any of these players, I just don't think it's anything kind of worth worrying about at the moment, particularly because there's a lot of football to focus on as well, to be honest.
I think that's where some of the concern comes in, that this becomes a bigger issue as it gets closer to the winter window. And as much as everybody will say that these guys are professionals, and they are, uncertainty isn't really anybody's friend in this. Whether you're a player thinking about your own contract extension or looking ahead to the future, I do understand why fans are anxious about it, but I also respect and understand the other side of the coin as well, where these are private negotiations. I think we're just looking for any little sign, as you've said, maybe that there's some positivity in it, because everybody respects and rates these guys so highly. This is not just 3 normal contract extensions. These are 3 of the spine of this successful team.
But that is also why I think Liverpool just won't allow it to get to a situation where 3 of them leave. I just can't see any world where that happens, to be honest. So that for me is why I just think it will get resolved. And I think there are so many signs that point towards resolutions coming that I just don't feel that kind of concerned about it. I think, you do, if you get to the other side of January, it does start to get a little bit, that is where, for me, concern will come in, because as much as, the clubs can talk to them now anyway, let's be honest, that's how it works. But I think, to really publicly court these players as well and really make a concerted push to try and get them, I'm sure that will happen. So I think Liverpool would like to have them wrapped up before then, but we've still got some time before that happens. These, negotiations are, it's a process, and they're going through it now, and it's back and forth. But until we hear anything concrete, I'm sure there's plenty more good performances to come. And in terms of distractions as well, I would point to last season. I didn't think Jurgen Klopp's departure was a distraction in the slightest, to be honest. I think Liverpool's biggest problem was getting so many injuries, really. I don't think the Jurgen thing mattered that much, and I think it will be similar around the players. And also, I believe that at least a couple of them will get signed up anyway, and it will be kind of a non-issue before we get to the end of the season anyway. So I don't think it's going to be too big a distraction.
Appreciate your input on that as always, sir. I wanted to go back to Jamie Carragher for a moment, because he made another comment during the week about maybe Liverpool being short of that X-factor player. He went on to speak about the likes of De Bruyne and Martin Odegaard. It kind of got me thinking. 1, I can see where he's coming from, but 2, I don't know where that player fits in to our squad and our team at the minute with regards to the way Arna has the boys playing, because you would say Szoboszlai is probably the closest we have in the current setup to that. He works his backside off. His press is really important, and he adds a lot into the midfield, as does Curtis Jones in this new style under the manager. Do you agree with Jamie Carragher that maybe we are missing that X-factor type player, and where would we put him in if we did have one?
For me, I think the area I think Liverpool are maybe, lacking a little bit of X-factor is maybe just in the forward line at the moment. I think, I've kind of maybe mentioned this before, but I think it's been a long time since they've signed a player of the, Sadio Mane, Mo Salah, when they signed for the club, the level they were instantly at, and then their peak level. We've got an unbelievable version of Mo Salah still, but it's not quite peak Mo Salah. And then you look across the remaining forward options. Jota, he's a goal scorer, but a bit messy around the box sometimes. Darwin Núñez quite up and down. Chiesa, we don't know what he's going to be. Diaz, has been a goal threat this season, but again, can be inconsistent, similar with Gakpo. So they've got, Mo Salah, who's still world class, but not what he was, and then a really good supporting cast. But for me, you would like one of those forward options to just be peak level Sadio Mane, to be honest. And I don't think Liverpool have quite got that. I think they've got enough X factor in kind of midfield with what Gravenberch and McAllister can do, and Szoboszlai when he's on song. But I would just like another forward who's kind of like that, and that's one little question mark I have over Liverpool really going forward this season in terms of winning things is, are they going to have that one player who sort of, can dig them out constantly and get those sort of unbelievable goals to win games 1-0. I mean, maybe that will still be Mo Salah. Maybe this will be his last season being absolutely ridiculously unbelievable. But I still feel like they could have done with another. But I might be wrong about that, and we'll see. Maybe the system can kind of hide those flaws and make sure the goals come consistently enough anyway.
Might that player be a compatriot of Mohamed Salah? As an example, Omar Marmoush's name once again this week has been roughly linked to Liverpool.
Yeah, he makes a lot of sense to me, just age-wise, profile-wise, coming from a Bundesliga, scoring a lot of goals. He's one of those that I've no doubt Liverpool are keeping an eye on. I think it would need movement in that centre forward role, and I have to say, I've criticised Darwin so much. I think he's been brilliant these last 3 games in terms of his contribution to the team. So long may that continue. And if he has the rest of every appearance between now and the end of the season is like this, then I think he gives himself a great chance of sticking around at Liverpool. But if not, and there's going to be movement in that centre forward position, then maybe Marmoush is someone that you look at.
Absolutely agree about Darwin, by the way. I really enjoyed this version of Darwin over the last few weeks. It maybe hasn't been scoring gluts of goals, but my goodness, he's been helping that forward line and working his socks off. So, yeah, as you said, long may that continue. Just before we finish up, just the injuries, David. Just wanted to check in on the likes of Chiesa, Elliott, Alisson, Bradley, maybe even Jayden Danns. Who's the closest maybe to coming back? It's probably the easiest way to go with this.
Yeah, so from the impression I got from Slot last time we saw him was that kind of Chiesa and Bradley are in with a shout of being back in the squad for the Brighton game in midweek, which I think would be a boost. I think particularly as I would quite like to see some rotation in this game if possible. So would be nice to have them back as options for that. Beyond that, kind of struggling to see Jota being back for this one. Still think that's going to be, maybe he might be ready for the weekend. We'll have to kind of see around that one. But, because it's bruising and not a break, I'm a little bit more optimistic. It's not too long, but we'll have to see. That's just kind of when the pain subsides, he will be ready, I guess. Elliott maybe a couple more weeks away now, which is maybe slightly slower than was expected. But I think they're just being extra careful. They don't want to re-break there. And in terms of any others, I think if I missed anyone,
I think the only other ones were Chiesa and Danns, perhaps. Chiesa just a bit
Chiesa
really,
and Bradley should be 2 that you would hope would be back in the squad for this one, I think.
And then just
Jane
Danns.
Dan's not particularly sure. I mean, he should be in and there or thereabouts. I'm not sure if he's going to be thrown into train with the under-21s rather than coming straight back into first team training anyway, just to get him back up to fitness. He's missed a little bit of football, hasn't he? So I'm not sure we'd be seeing him around first team training just yet anyway. He needs to get that sharpness up.
Appreciate your time, as always, David. I know sometimes the questions are a little bit raw because obviously there's a lot of emotion involved for us fans at the minute around the contract. So I always appreciate your honesty and sincerity in answering them. Anything coming up for yourself this week that you want people to know about?
Yeah, going to write a piece on Vítězslav Jaroš. Is going to come out on my Substack, so that should be out tomorrow morning. If people want to have a read of that, bit of background, bit of insight into why he's got that accent and a little bit of his background in terms of how he's got to this point. So hopefully that's an interesting one to read.
Certainly one that I'll be looking forward to reading because I'm intrigued by Jarosh. I really am. He looks a good young goalkeeper. And actually on him, do you think we might see him on Wednesday night?
I suspect yes. I think so. I think with Kelleher being, he's got a lot of games to get through at the moment till Alisson is back. I think an opportunity to see him, yeah.
Oh, well, let's see how he gets on. David, thank you as always for your time and thank you to you guys for watching and listening. We always appreciate your support. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.